Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihare Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Giri Varadare Jaya Giri Varadare Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachare Jaya Kunja Bihare Jaya Kunja Bihare Yamuna Tiravanachare Jaya Kunja Bihare Jaya Kunja Bihare Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihare Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Hare Krishna, everybody. My obeisances to you. Beg for your mercy and your blessings. You can say something useful from all the senior devotees here. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 7, Text number 7. Chapter is entitled The Cosmic Manifestation. Kamam dahanti kritino nanurosha drishtya. Rosham dahantam uttate na dahantya sahyam. Soyam yarantaramalam pravishan bibheti. Kama katam na punarasya manashrayeta. Kamam dahanti kritino nanurosha drishtya. Rosham dahantam utate na dahantya sahyam. Soyam yarantaramalam pravishan bibheti. Kama katam na punarasya manashrayeta. Kamam dahanti kritino nanurosha drishtya. Rosham dahantam utate na dahantya sahyam. Soyam yadantaramalam pravishan bibheti. Kama katam na punarasya manashrayeta. Kamam dahanti kritino nanurosha drishtya. Rosham dahantam utate na dahantya sahyam. Soyam yadantaramalam pravishan bibheti. Kama katam na punarasya manashrayeta. Thank you, Mataji's. Kamam dahanti kritino nanurosha drishtya. Rosham dahantam utate na dahantya sahyam. Soyam yadantaramalam pravishan bibheti. Kama katam na punarasya manashrayeta. Thank you, word for word. Kamam, lust. Dahanti, chastise. Kritina, great stalwarts. Nanu, but. Rosha drishtya, by wrathful glance. Rosham, wrath. Dahantam, being overwhelmed. Uta, although. Te, they. Na, cannot. Dahanti, subjugate. Asahyam, intolerable. Saha, that. Ayam, him. Yat, because. Antaram, within. Alam, however. Pravishan, entering. Bibheti, is afraid of Kama, lust. Katam, how. Nu, as a matter of fact. Puna, again. Asya, his. Mana, mind. Shrayeta, take shelter of. Translation by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Great stalwarts like Lord Shiva can, by their wrathful glances, overcome lust and vanquish him, yet they cannot be free from the overwhelming effects of their own wrath. Such wrath can never enter into the heart of him, the Lord, who is above all this. So how can lust take shelter in his mind? Please repeat after me. Great stalwarts like Lord Shiva can, by their wrathful glances, overcome lust and vanquish him. Yet they cannot be free from the overwhelming effects of their own wrath. Such wrath can never enter the heart of him, the Lord, who is above all this. So how can lust take shelter in his mind? Thank you. Purport. When Lord Shiva was engaged in severely austere meditation, Cupid, the demigod of lust, threw his arrow of sex desire. Lord Shiva, thus being angry at him, glanced at Cupid in great wrath, and at once the body of Cupid was annihilated. Although Lord Shiva was so powerful, he was unable to get free from the effects of such wrath. But in the behavior of Lord Vishnu, there is no incident of such wrath at any time. On the contrary, Bhrigu Muni tested the tolerance of the Lord by purposely kicking his chest. But instead of being angry at Bhrigu Muni, the Lord begged his pardon, saying that Bhrigu Muni's leg might have been badly hurt because his chest is too hard. The Lord has the sign of the foot of Bhrigupad as the mark of tolerance. The Lord therefore is never affected by any kind of wrath. So how can there be any place for lust, which is less strong than wrath? When lust or desire is not fulfilled, there is the appearance of wrath. But in the absence of wrath, how can there be any place for lust? The Lord is known as Aptakama, or one who can fulfill his desires by himself. He does not require anyone's help to satisfy his desires. Listen what it says next. The Lord is unlimited, and therefore his desires are also unlimited. So it says previously, Krishna can fulfill all his desires. He doesn't need anybody's help. But his desires are unlimited. Has unlimited desires. All living entities but the Lord are limited in every respect. How then can the limited satisfy the desires of the unlimited? The conclusion is that the absolute personality of Godhead has neither lust nor anger, and even if there is sometimes a show of lust and anger by the Absolute, it should be considered an absolute benediction. Read the verse one more time. Kamam dahanti kritino nanurosha drishtya, rosham dahantamutate na dahantyasahyam, soyam yarantaramalam pravishan bipeti, kama katam na punar asya manashrayeta. Great stalwarts like Lord Shiva can, by their wrathful glances, overcome lust and vanquish him, yet they cannot be free from the overwhelming effects of their own wrath. Such wrath can never enter into the heart of him, the Lord, who is above all this. So how can lust take shelter in his mind? Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshura Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Site Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Shri Ram Swami Namani. So this verse brings up a lot of interesting points. Actually, it's an interesting chapter dealing with the different incarnations of Krishna, different than it's described in the first canto. There's more, emphasizes different points, brings out different pastimes, and it's interesting how Shukadeva Goswami is listing the different incarnations and the points that he makes. Just like this verse is carrying on from the previous verse where we're hearing about Naranarayan Rishi, and the point that the demigods manifested these nymphs, these heavenly damsels, to contaminate the consciousness of Naranarayan Rishi or to distract them, and Naranarayan Rishi he wasn't distracted at all. And then it goes on to this verse explaining how Krishna is not disturbed by wrath, and other personalities like Lord Shiva, when he was tempted by such personalities, actually was by Cupid, then he wasn't disturbed by Cupid, he wasn't bewildered, he wasn't influenced by lust, but he was influenced by wrath. He became angry with Cupid, and that was his fall down, or that was his fault in that situation. So it is carrying on from the previous verse, and it's bringing up these points, and we'll explore some of those points. I may bring up more questions actually than I bring up statements, because there's a lot of interesting points here. I thought the first thing we could discuss was Cupid. So he's mentioned here in the verse. Well, actually, he's not mentioned in the verse, but Srila Prabhupada talks about him in the purport. When Lord Shiva was engaged in severely austere meditation, Cupid, the demigod of lust, threw his arrow of sex desire. Lord Shiva, thus being angry at him, glanced at Cupid in great wrath, and at once the body of Cupid was annihilated. So Cupid is an interesting personality. There are different Cupids. There are different manifestations of Cupid. Actually, Krishna is the real Cupid. Krishna is the original Cupid that incites lust in the heart of the Gopis, and is the original all-attractive personality who attracts everybody. But Cupid also manifests in different forms, which we'll hear about now. I'm going to read a little part of Navavraja Mahima, which talks about Cupid and a pastime that happened in Vrindavan at a particular place called Mohan Ter. So I'll just read this, it's very beautiful. As already mentioned, Sevakunj stretches as far as the Yamuna, and so Ramanreti is also part of Nikunjavan, as is the area next to it, which is home to sacred Mohan Ter and Jaru Mandala. Allow me first to sing the glories of Mohan Ter. To hear those glories is to free oneself from Cupid's shackles, which keep even the greatest demigods, not to mention ordinary men, in the grip of lust. From Krishna's youth, the nocturnal rasa dance and his other love sports with the gopis were the talk of the heavenly planets. From the private gatherings of heavenly goddesses to Indra's court assemblies. As Vaishnavas, the demigods were enchanted by the spontaneous loving exchanges between the gopis and Lord Krishna, praising those exchanges as superior to their own motivated, regulated devotion. Amongst the demigods, those who were advanced would recall the rasa dance during their chanting and meditation, and also meet in solitary places to discuss the esoteric truths of Vraja Bhakti. Cupid was not so spiritually advanced, as he was too passionate to fully appreciate the Rasa Leela. But he had overheard enough from the talks of other demigods to feel a keen interest in seeing it for himself. A long time ago, Cupid had tried to entice Shiva to unite with Parvati, a venture that greatly enraged Lord Shiva, who then burned Cupid's body to ashes, leaving the god of love in a ghost-like state. So that's the pastime that we're hearing here in the Bhagavatam. After that time, Cupid, disembodied and invisible, that's why he's called Ananga, continued to incite love within conditioned souls, annoyed that without a gross body he could no longer personally enjoy his art. One day, Cupid, also known as Kamadev, the deity of lust, and Manmata, the churner of hearts, decided that when he attended the rasa dance, he would incite the fire of passion within Krishna. Cupid could not believe the demigod's glowing appraisals of Krishna. He thought, how is it possible that someone in the prime of youth can dance with beautiful young girls and still be untouched by lust? Determined to prove that Krishna was susceptible to his wiles, Cupid, armed with bow and arrows and accompanied by spring, a soft breeze, cuckoos, and humming bees, entered a garden of Nikunjavan. Meanwhile, Krishna was enjoying himself, dancing by moonlight in nearby Sevakunj. Fully aware of Cupid's intentions, he led Radha and the Gopis on a stroll to view the splendor of Vrindavan. Krishna took Radha to see Raman Reti and the Krishna Balaram tree, and from there, singing of each other's love, qualities, and beauty, they headed west to the garden where Cupid lay in wait. It was summer, but because Cupid had brought spring with him, as soon as Radha and Sham stepped into the garden, they felt refreshed and invigorated by the opulences of the Prince of Seasons. Responding to the atmosphere they had entered, the divine couple sang a song in Vasanta Rag, and as Cupid's pet cuckoo sweetly sustained the fifth note, Radha and Krishna joyfully imitated it. Cupid's bees hummed around Radha and Krishna in another attempt to excite their passions. But in tribute to the bees, the divine couple took turns tasting the honey from each other's lips. Even though Krishna held Radha's hand in his, Cupid could see that their bodies radiated a most pure and sublime goodness, devoid of even the slightest trace of lust, passion, or ignorance. Still intent on making his point, Cupid called upon a gentle breeze from the Malayan hills, fragrant with the smell of sandalwood, to excite Krishna, but Radha purified it of its ardor simply by her praise. By their pure love, Radha and Krishna were neutralizing all of Cupid's attacks, and Cupid was unable to understand why his potencies could do nothing to inflame the hearts of the two lovers. To Cupid, Radha and Krishna appeared to be just like the scores of other lovers he had excited to the heights of passion. But these two not only resisted his machinations, but also counteracted them. Indeed, Krishna was like a divine monsoon cloud, sprinkling the gopis, the forest creatures, and even the trees with a special sort of passion, saturated with love, but lacking even the slightest trace of lust. As the gopis filled the air with a shower of fragrant flower pollen, Krishna placed the flute to his lips and began to slowly dance with Radha, while the girls danced around them in a circle, singing. The sound of Krishna's flute entered Cupid's ear like a mystic mantra, and like a virus it spread through his being, sapping him of vitality until he felt his life coming to an end. As a last resort, Cupid shot an arrow at his sapphire target, but the weapon that had aroused Brahma entered Lord Krishna's body without any visible effect, like a pebble falling into a raging river. Cupid released his arrows one after another, but instead of returning to his quiver after being shot as per usual, they all disappeared into Krishna's body, leaving Cupid weaponless, bewildered, and humiliated. Perhaps the demigods were right, thought Cupid. Gradually, as he pondered the sublime nature of Krishna's loving dealings, true faith bubbled up in Cupid, profoundly altering his vision of Lord Krishna. As the gopis happily sang and danced around Krishna like a golden wheel, the Lord stood, his body bent in 3 places, accompanying his beloveds with his flute, all the while staring at Cupid. Just as Krishna had revealed himself to Brahma after the Creator's vain attempt to test his mystic powers on the Lord by stealing the cowherd boys and cows, he now revealed himself to Cupid. The god of love could now see Krishna as the original transcendental Cupid, who invests a perverted material reflection of his amorous potency in the living entity known as Cupid in this world. Because Cupid's weapons and associates were reflections of Krishna's own potency, using them against him was like pouring a handful of water into the ocean. They had no effect whatsoever on the Lord. Now Cupid could understand all of this. He gazed at Krishna's unfathomable beauty, marveled at his prowess, and regretted having impertinently challenged the Lord with such trivial enticements. Noting Cupid's repentant attitude, Krishna took pity on him. For a brief moment, Krishna let Cupid taste the gopis' love for him, enabling Cupid to see Krishna exactly as the cowherd girls do. Is everybody still with me here? I see a few closed eyes. Hopefully you're just meditating on the pastimes. His heart and eyes now bathed in love, Cupid felt an overwhelming upsurge of pure amorous attraction to Sri Krishna. Sweet, selfless, and charitable love, not comparable to any mundane sentiment. That divine ecstasy caused Cupid to forget his own identity. Deluded, he thought himself to be one of the gopis attending Krishna, and he foolishly tried to show his love for the Lord as the gopis did. But Cupid had neither a gopi's body nor the qualification to serve Krishna in the manner of the gopis. Thus his mounting ecstasy could only express itself as bewilderment, mohan, which ended in a faint. Krishna is known as Mada Mohan, the attractor of Cupid. Because Krishna's attractiveness so overwhelmed Cupid that he fainted in ecstasy on this spot, this place is known as Mohanter. Cupid was not visible to the gopis while all this was going on, and Krishna did not want to interrupt the rasa dance, so the gopis were aware of only their ecstatic exchanges with Sri Krishna. But Krishna's blessings freed Cupid from Lord Shiva's curse. Kamadev was given not only a new body, but also the opportunity to advance spiritually by joining the Lord's earthly entourage. How? Anybody have any idea what happened to Cupid after that? It's mentioned in the Krishna book. Cupid's there as one of Krishna's associates. Sorry? Yeah, Rukmini's son, Pradyumna, yeah. That night, Cupid merged with the Vasudeva aspect of Krishna's body, and later took birth from Rukmini in Dwarka, appearing within the body of the Lord's Vishnu Tattva expansion, Pradyumna. Having once again obtained a body, Cupid was reunited with his consort Rati. He lived with her in Dwarka until the destruction of the Yadu dynasty, after which he returned to the heavenly planets. Cupid's intimate connection with Pradyumna indicates that Cupid's devotion to Krishna is mixed, not spontaneous. For this reason, he cannot enter Vraj, nor do his weapons have any effect there. And this is an interesting statement here that I kind of don't quite understand. Maybe this is some senior devotees here could answer it or just think about it. Indeed, the dominion of Pradyumna, the spiritual Cupid, over Vaikuntha, where he influences the hearts of the Lord's consorts with amorous attraction, extends only as far as Dwarka. So this is the spiritual Cupid now we're talking about, Pradyumna. So he also influences Vaikuntha, but his influence only goes as far as Dwarka. So I was just thinking about it this morning. As far as I understand with that, then it seems like he affects the inhabitants of Vaikuntha to be attracted to one another, like husbands and wives. But that attraction only extends as far as Dwarka. Any thoughts on that? Comments, senior devotees? Maharaj? Srinivas Prabhu? It's an interesting comment. I have never heard that before. I mean, maybe it means that... No, yeah, anyway, I'm assuming it means that, but yeah, interesting thing to investigate. Yeah?
Oh, I don't know much, but I just heard that, that with the gopis' love for Krishna, the reason why it's like so special, their love, is because it's just like one-pointed, whereas described with, like for example, the inhabitants of Dwarka, the queens of Krishna and Dwarka, their love is not one-pointed, because their focus is also on family, their children. So just saying that there's a distinction.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've also heard that the love of the queens in Dwarka is not as pure as the gopis. It's not, although it's prema, it's not as selfless as the prema of the gopis. So even there, in the spiritual world, in prema, there's also different distinctions of what love is higher and lower, or higher and even higher, and more higher and most higher. Thank you, Prabhu. As Kaviraj Goswami says, in Vrindavan there is one and only one Cupid. Vrindavane apakrita navina madana. In the spiritual realm of Vrindavan, Krishna is the spiritual ever-fresh Cupid. Let us worship that ever-fresh Cupid by chanting Kama Gayatri and the Hare Krishna Mahamantra without offense, remaining immune to the arrows of the mundane Cupid who stalks conditioned souls. The defeat of Cupid at Mohanta is a confidential pastime. Devotees who delve deeply into its significance will gain a rare fruit that even great demigods like Brahma long for, freedom from lust. Okay, and then I'll finish it there. So I thought that was very relevant and interesting exposition on Cupid, because, as I said, Krishna is the original Cupid, but we also have our demigod Cupid within this material world who was burnt to ashes by Lord Shiva and then was left without a gross body. And then we also hear, if you read Srimad Bhagavatam or Krishna book, about Pradyumna. It says here, I'll quote this is from Krishna book, 61st chapter. Pradyumna, the eldest son of Krishna, born of Rukmini, was Cupid himself. He was so beautiful and attractive that the daughter of Rukmi, namely Rukmavati, could not select any husband other than Pradyumna during her Swayamvar. Therefore, in that selection meeting, she garlanded Pradyumna in the presence of all the other princes. And it also explains that Pradyumna is so similar to Krishna that when he was in Dwarka and he entered into the palaces of the queens, because his mother was living there, many of the queens of Dwarka thought that he was Krishna, and they became very shy. Krishna's here in our quarters, he's walking around. And it was only after some time that they realized it's actually not Krishna, it's somebody else. So these differentiations are quite subtle, but as it says there in Navavraj Mahima, then Pradyumna, the demigod, after he met Krishna in Vrindavan at Mohanta and tried to bewilder him, then he merged into the body of Krishna, or Vasudeva more specifically, and then he merged into the body of Pradyumna. And that's how Pradyumna, well, not that's how Pradyumna is Cupid, but that is how the material Cupid is also present there. So we'll speak about Cupid a little bit more later as well, because Krishna is the original Cupid in Vrindavan, attracting everybody. But one of the pastimes that's mentioned here in the purport, where we're hearing that Lord Shiva is affected by wrath and Krishna is not, is the pastime of Bhrigu Muni. So I'm sure most of you know that pastime. It's a famous pastime that's there in Krishna book, how Bhrigu Muni wanted to find out who was the supreme, and he tested Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and Lord Vishnu. He tested Lord Brahma by just not paying respects to him when he came. Brahma is the father of Bhrigu Muni, and Brahma became angry, but he controlled that anger, and he didn't manifest it externally. Then Bhrigu Muni tested Lord Shiva a little bit more. When he went to see Lord Shiva, who is his brother, then Shiva came to him to embrace him, and Bhrigu Muni said, "Don't touch me." He said, "You're contaminated, you're covered by ashes, you associate with impure personalities, don't come near me." So that was slightly more intense offense because it was done by words. And Lord Shiva became very angry and he wanted to actually kill Bhrigu Muni. And it was only when Parvati managed to dissuade him from that he refrained from doing so. And then we know that Bhrigu Muni went to Lord Vishnu And he didn't just disrespect him or say harsh words, but he actually kicked him in the chest. And when that happened, then Lord Vishnu anxiously got up and inquired as to the welfare of Bhrigu Muni, because he was afraid that Bhrigu would have hurt his foot by kicking him in the chest. So this is an example of Krishna's being free from anger and being beyond that, as we're hearing in the verse in the purport. And also Shiva not being beyond that. So Shiva is such an interesting personality, very difficult to quantify. We hear that there's two things that are very difficult to understand, Guru Tattva and Shiva Tattva. I'm just reading about Lord Shiva at the moment in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. So Shiva is Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu. He's a Mahajan, he's a pure devotee, but it does say here that he is affected by wrath, but not lust. So we hear another pastime how one time Shiva was in meditation and Parvati came to him and she was, I think she wanted to have progeny, or maybe she just wanted to enjoy, but she touched his genitals while Shiva was meditating, and Shiva was undisturbed. He just carried on meditating. It wasn't disturbing for him at all. And we also hear with the pastime of Chitraketu Maharaj in Srimad Bhagavatam how Lord Shiva is giving Bhagavatam class to the sages with his wife sat on his lap. So for Shiva, this is not an issue, it's not a problem, his mind doesn't become disturbed, he's transcendental to that. But not wrath, supposedly. Prabhupada says in the purport that wrath is even more disturbing than lust, which is also an interesting point, which I have various questions about, but that's what Prabhupada says there. But we also hear the other pastime with Lord Shiva, how he goes to Krishna and says he wants to see Krishna's form as a woman. He's heard that Krishna manifested amongst the demigods as Mohini Murti, and he wants to see that form. So Krishna manifests that form before Lord Shiva, and Shiva doesn't realize that it's Krishna. He just sees this beautiful woman playing, bouncing a ball in the forest. Shiva's intrigued. He follows her, and as she's bouncing the ball, her dress falls off, and Shiva's even more bewildered, and he just runs after this lady, Mohini Murti, all throughout the universe, past all of the sages and the demigods that are worshipping Lord Shiva. They just see Lord Shiva running after this girl, and then Shiva discharges semen also after seeing that girl, but that semen creates gold mines on the earth, so we can understand that this is no ordinary activity. And another question from my side is that it's said that Lord Shiva was affected by lust because he was attracted to Mohini Murti, but that Mohini Murti is Krishna, that Mohini Murti is Vishnu. So that is, from as far as I understand, that's totally transcendental and spiritual. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda Ki Jai. And it's said in the Bhagavatam at that point, when Shiva discharged his semen, then he kind of came back to normal consciousness, came a bit sober, and he realized actually what had happened and who that was and how Krishna had fulfilled his desire. And he wasn't ashamed. He realized that this is Krishna's potency, and Krishna is my Lord, and Krishna can bewilder me. Nobody else can bewilder me, but Krishna can. So he wasn't ashamed, which to me indicates also that it wasn't some kind of fall down or some kind of anomaly, but this is pure because he was attracted to Krishna. So Shiva is in that interesting position that he is Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu, but also there are some things that happen sometime that may be difficult to understand, like him becoming angry, for instance. But these things do not affect Krishna. So Prabhupada says in the purport here that the conclusion is that the absolute personality of Godhead has neither lust nor anger. So this could also be questioned, that is that correct, that Krishna doesn't have any lust and he doesn't have any anger? What do you think, Prabhus and Matajis? Are there any instances where Krishna or his incarnations become angry or they become lusty? Can you think of any? Yes, Srinivas Prabhu? Yeah, he didn't just become a little bit miffed. Like I said, like the ocean was boiling, right? Because of Lord Ram's anger, so he was extremely angry. Any other instances? Parashuram, good example, he was pretty angry. Destroyed 21 generations of kshatriyas. That anger lasted quite a long time. 21 generations. It wasn't just happen at one go, right? It was over a long period of time. Yes, Peru? Yep, Krishna became angry when the Kauravas abused Draupadi. Yeah. Last one. Any other instances? Yeah. And Nrsimhadev, yeah. Nrsimhadev is the best example of Krishna becoming angry. Nrsimhadev was so angry that he ripped out the intestines of Hiranyakashipu and garlanded himself with them. Actually, I heard a story recently. There was a family that I met, a devotee family, and they were here, and I said, "Oh, nice to see you, Hare Krishna. Where's your daughter?" And they said, "Oh, our daughter, she came to the temple the other day, and she saw the picture of Nrsimhadev, and she's never seen that picture before, and so she won't come back to the temple now." This isn't just some, these are serious devotees, serious practicing devotees, so she's scared of Nrsimhadev so much so that she didn't come to the temple on that occasion. So yeah, Nrsimhadev is so angry that the demigods would not approach him. And any examples of Krishna or his incarnations being lusty? Or not? Krishna is totally beyond that, not interested. Sorry? Indra? What happened with Indra? Yeah, that's a little bit different because Indra is a jiva and he's a demigod. So maybe that position represents Krishna, but he's a jiva, so that doesn't really quite fit in the same category. Although an interesting thing is that, actually I won't bring it up now, we'll just continue with this, yeah? Yeah, that's right. Krishna. Yeah. Yeah. So Krishna was holding up Govardhana Hill. All the inhabitants were there, but when he was looking at the gopis, he was bewildered by their beauty, and he became bewildered, and the hill began to shake. So yeah, Prabhupada says here that the absolute personality of Godhead has neither lust nor anger. And even if there is sometimes a show of lust and anger by the Absolute, even if there is sometimes a little bit, it should be considered an absolute benediction. So we hear like this statement that the Lord has no arms or legs, right? But he still moves faster than anything you can imagine. So it's a simple explanation that Krishna has no material lust. Otherwise, Kamadev would be able to affect Krishna, right? Kamadev comes, shoots his arrows, Krishna becomes bewildered. What happened? Kamadev fainted because he was overpowered by the potency of Krishna. Just like Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma stole the cowherd boys by his mystic potency. But then when he saw that Krishna had expanded as the cowherd boys, he was bewildered by that. How can that be? Because I'm not bewildered by anything within this universe. Lord Brahma is omniscient within this material universe. He's conscious of everything. Can you imagine? He's conscious of every single thing within the universe. So, but he couldn't understand that, so he was totally bewildered. So Krishna experiences lust, Krishna experiences anger, but it's totally pure. It's totally transcendental. It's the origin of what we experience in this material world, just as my Guru Maharaj wrote in Navavaji Mahima that Krishna is the origin of the perverted lust that manifests in this material world through Cupid. So those relationships are there in the spiritual world. Adi Rasa, the original rasa, is Madhurya Rasa, but it's totally pure and uncontaminated. And actually, if one is affected in this material world by material contamination, but he hears those pastimes, even if Krishna dancing with the gopis or kissing the gopis or embracing the gopis, you actually become purified from our own lust. It's so pure, although it has to be done. It's a medicine, so you don't take 3 bottles of paracetamol. If you have a headache, you take 1 tablet or 2 tablets, and they won't even sell it in the pharmacy, actually. They won't sell you more than, I think, 2 bottles of paracetamol. It's like in our culture, right? We don't sell everything in Bhagavatam class or amongst devotees. We just give you, a few tablets of paracetamol to deal with our material contamination. But Vikriditam Vrajavadu Bed Idam Cha Vishnu. By hearing these pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan, then we're freed from our material lust. There's also a relevant pastime to that point when one time Durvasa Muni, he was in Vrindavan, as he goes there sometimes. Very interesting pastimes when Durvasa Muni goes to Vrindavan. He meets the gopis, he meets Radharani, gives her benedictions. And this time he went to Vrindavan and he was meditating. He was just there and performing his bhajan on the other side of the Yamuna. And the gopis went there. They heard, Durvasa Muni is in Vrindavan. Let's go and serve him. Let's go and please him. Let's go and bring him some food. Let's cook for him. He's the great saint. So they went to see Durvasa Muni, and I haven't read it, I didn't prepare it for this class, but when they saw Durvasa Muni, they served him and pleased him. They came to the Yamuna to get to Durvasa Muni, but they couldn't cross the Yamuna. The Yamuna was too wide and too big. But they could see Durvasa Muni, and they said, how can we get across? We want to serve you, we want to please you, we want to do something for you. And actually, I'm messing this up a little bit. Do you remember exactly, Maharaj, how the first bit? Yeah. So Krishna helped them in the beginning. Okay. So they got to the Yamuna, thank you. And they couldn't get across. And Krishna was also there. Krishna's he's always happy to have some fun and annoy the gopis a little bit. So they said, we need to get across, we want to see Durvasa Muni. Krishna said, no problem, I can help you. You just say, by the strength of Krishna's brahmacharya, we want to cross the Yamuna. And when he said this, the gopis just laughed at him. What do you mean by the strength of Krishna's brahmacharya? You were dancing with us in the rasa dance all night last night. What kind of brahmacharya are you? And Krishna says, listen to what I say. Say that if you want to go and see Durvasa Muni. Take it or leave it, And what other option have you got? So they said, okay, well, let's try. By the strength of Krishna's brahmacharya, let us cross the Yamuna. And the waves of the Yamuna parted, and the gopis walked across. They went to see Durvasa Muni, and the waves came back. And they were just bewildered. What is that? How is that? Krishna's a brahmachari. Krishna's not anything. He's not a grihasta, he's not a brahmachari, he's not a vanaprastha, he's just hanging out in the forest, playing his flute. So they went to see Durvasa Muni, they brought their preparations from him. They fed Durvasa Muni, kachoris, puris, pakoras, sweet rice, halava, burfi, everything you can imagine. The gopis cooked. Every time Radharani cooks, she's the best cook. This weekend we're going to be celebrating Radhastami. Actually, it's Ladies' Week this week. Today is the appearance day of Sita Thakurani. Lalita Shashti is also, I think it's the day before Radhashtami. So very important female personalities appearing this week. So they arrived to Durvasa Muni and they said, please enjoy this. He ate the whole feast, massive feast. And then he was pleased, he was satisfied, and the gopis went to leave. And then again they come to the Yamuna. Krishna's not around this time. And they say to Durvasa Muni, Krishna was here when we came across. We don't understand how, but we said, by the strength of Krishna's brahmacharya, may we cross, and we crossed. And they said, now we need to go back, but how will we go back? And Durvasa Muni said, it's easy. He said, just say, by the power of Durvasa Muni only ever eating Durva grass, may we cross this Yamuna. And the gopis looked at Durvasa Muni and said, we just fed you a huge feast. How can it be that you only ever eat Durva grass? And how will that work? And Durvasa Muni explained to them that it's all about motivation. So lust, there is lust in the spiritual world. Kameshwari, Kamadev. So the Brahmanas are chanting every day, they're worshipping. They're doing Kama Gayatri. And Kamadev, this is spiritual lust, this is the Adi Rasa, this is where it all comes from, this pure rasa in the spiritual world. So Krishna, and there's many topics in this presentation for the class that go beyond the scope of 40 minutes. There's many different things that are topics that require research and discussion. And this is one that the gopis were saying to Krishna after he had left the rasa dance and he came back. They were saying, why do you do that? Why do you act like that? Why did you leave us? How can you do that? You know, what is your motivation? Do you want to cause us pain? Or are you just not aware of what you're doing? Or are you self-satisfied? Or what does it mean? What is it? Why do you act like that? We don't understand. And Krishna explained that he doesn't need anything. He's not in need of anything. He's not looking for some kind of external sense objects as we are in this material world. He's not in want of anything. But he just reciprocates the love of those people that approach him. And according to how his servants approach him, then he reciprocates in that way. Yeyatam mam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham. So the gopis approach Krishna in Madhurya Ras. Krishna reciprocates in Madhurya Ras. That's the fullest rasa. That has all of the elements of all of the other rasas that are there. For us, it's like weird or like too much or contaminating because we're contaminated by that. But we're seeing it from our filtered perspective. Originally, philosophically, we can understand that's pure, that's fine, it's perfect. And it is perfect. So Krishna, he's a brahmachari because he doesn't have any lust. He doesn't have any need to enjoy. He doesn't have any attraction to any material sense objects. So when his parts and parcels want to enjoy with him, he reciprocates. He's a perfect brahmachari. He's transcendental. He doesn't have any need for anything. He's reciprocating. And he enjoys that love. That is what Krishna's looking for. He's looking for that love. In whatever form, in whatever rasa, from whoever. Just as Lord Ram said that the spider kicks along a grain of sand. Hanuman is throwing mountains. Doesn't matter. One doesn't give me more pleasure than the other. It's that he's trying and that he's trying to love me. And the same with Durvasa Muni, that he's happy with Durva grass. He doesn't need anything else. He just eats that usually. If somebody offers him something else, he'll accept it because they offered it. But it's not that he wants to enjoy that. He's not getting any of the karma from eating something because he doesn't need it. He's totally satisfied. He's beyond that. So in the same way, Krishna, he enjoys many different types of relationships. He enjoys being Nrsimhadev. Actually, there's one instance when Shankachuda stole the gopis in Vrindavan. So he was there, he was lusting after the gopis, especially Srimati Radharani. And he herded the gopis away from Krishna. I think he even pulled Radharani by her hair. And then Krishna and Balaram rocked up and they took care of Shankachuda. Krishna ran after Shankachuda and he killed him. But it also says in Navavajra Mahima that when Krishna I think he was sitting on Shankachuda's chest, punching him in the face, he said, the only regret I have is that I can't torture you for eternity. Krishna said to him. So Krishna feels anger, but that anger is transcendental and pure. Otherwise, where does it come from in us? Where does it come from in Shiva? Where does it come from in Lord Brahma? So Krishna is the original pure origin of all of these rasas, but they become contaminated when they come in contact with this material world. We become contaminated by them, and then we cannot see the reality clearly. And so generally, maybe I think sometimes I go a bit over the top and speak about things that shouldn't be spoken about in Bhagavatam class probably. Please forgive me. Generally, we understand here that Krishna, like Prabhupada says, Krishna doesn't have any lust or anger. God doesn't have any material arms or legs. That's true, that's the fact. Okay, Krishna is brahmachari. And all those other things that happen, the anger or the relationships, it's all transcendental. And it's all beyond us. And the only way that we'll actually be able to understand those things more than we do now is if we become purified of our contaminations to those things, if we become purified of our lust, if we become purified of our anger. But the interesting thing is that, as I said, vikriditam vadubir idam cha Vishnu, that the only way to become free of those things is to hear about the original version, to some degree, according to the dosage that our gurus give us. Okay, thank you all for your attention. It's 8:30 or so. If anybody has any questions or comments or corrections. Maharajas, or Prayojan Prabhu also has a comment. Yes, Dayananda Maharaj would like to say something. I've never given a class with two sannyasis in the room, so please forgive my impertinence and any mistakes or offences.
Hare Krishna. You're saying that, Lord Shiva becomes angry, but he has no lust. Is that right?
That's what it says.
So it is anger transcendental or material?
Yeah, they're very good questions when it comes to Lord Shiva. Like I was going to ask you, Maharaj, that I need to check in Bhagavatam when it talks about Mohini Murti, because I remember Prabhupada's writing things there that about it's like a fall down for Lord Shiva. But I don't understand why it's a fall down, because it's Mohini Murti, unless it depends on the way that he was approaching her, like Kubja. So Kubja, do you think that's right, Maharaj, on the motivation? So Kubja she's described the boundary between the spiritual and material world. So she wanted Krishna, but she wanted to enjoy herself with Krishna. She was attracted to the Madhurya Ras with Krishna, you could say. So with Shiva also, it's like, I'm not sure, Maharaj. I'm sure you know better than me. Is the anger that Lord Shiva has material or spiritual? But it says here, they cannot be free from the overwhelming effects of their own wrath, which to me sounds like it's material because they're controlled by it. So also I was going to mention about Prabhupada, that Prabhupada, he would get angry, very angry with devotees. And then the next second he would be totally pure and calm or very kind to somebody else. So it wasn't like he was influenced by that anger, he just used it. But it says here with Lord Shiva, he cannot be free from the overwhelming effects of his own wrath. So all I can do is really repeat what it says here. Who has? Govinda Prabhu?
Madhya-lila 20:311. Lord Shiva is an associate of the external energy, therefore he is absorbed in the material quality of darkness. Lord Vishnu is transcendental to Maya and the qualities of Maya, therefore he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now in the purport, this is quite interesting. In his constitutional form, Shiva is a Mahabhagavat, a supreme devotee of the Lord, but because he accepts Maya's association, especially the quality of ignorance, he is not free from Maya's influence. Such an intimate association is completely absent in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. Lord Shiva accepts Maya, but in the presence of Lord Vishnu, Maya does not exist. Consequently, Lord Shiva is to be considered a product of Maya. When Lord Shiva is free from Maya's influence, he's in the position of a Mahabhagavat, a supreme devotee of Lord Vishnu, Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu.
So what's the form of Lord Shiva when he's freed of material contamination?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, are we talking here of different expansions of Shiva? There might be an expansion which is always free of Maya, and then there's another expansion which sometimes is. Or is it the same person at different times?
Cyrus, Prabhu? And Prayojan Prabhu's had his hand up for a long time.
So Prabhu, again, this is just more confusion for me. Shiva
Welcome to
Tattva
Krishna
and
consciousness.
everything else. So how is it, because he is considered the master of the three modes, material nature, material energy. So how is it he comes under the control of material energy if he's the master of it? Certainly you think he can be aloof if he wants to.
Yeah, I mean, really Krishna is the master of the modes of material nature. He's the real master. Shiva is, as we know, Krishna is always aloof from the material nature totally, but as he expands in different incarnations like the guna avatars to deal with material nature, then as Govinda Prabhu was quoting, that they come into contact with the material energy, so that compromises them to some degree. So, but yeah, what's not totally clear is it seems that there are different forms of Lord Shiva. It was also saying that in Brihad Bhagavatamrita that there was different places where Narada Muni could go and see Lord Shiva, and Lord Brahma was saying don't go and see him here, because not all of his opulences are manifested. Go and see him here, and that you'll see fully his opulences and that he's more opulent than me. Otherwise, you'll think he's less than me. So it appears that there's different forms of Lord Shiva, and it would appear, from what it says here, ostensibly, that this form is affected by the material energy, because he can't control that anger, so it seems to have an effect on him. Shiva is very difficult to understand. Krishna is difficult to understand also, but Shiva is very, very complex. Prayojan Prabhu wanted to say something, I believe.
It occurs to me that Lord Shiva, when he was chasing after Mohini Murti, that it wasn't necessary so much that he found out it was the Supreme Lord, that was okay. But actually, he embarrassed himself in front of others. In other words, that's where his anger come from. It's like he seemed to be out of control in the eyes of others. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Well, that was a different instance. Here it's talking that he became angry with Cupid. This was a different instance where Krishna was.
Angry with himself. I think.
Sorry?
Angry with himself.
No, angry with Cupid.
No.
So he was meditating. As far as I heard it, well, I read it, said that after Uma gave up her body, then Shiva had no consort, and he was meditating. So the demigods actually wanted Shiva to accept Parvati. So they approached him, he was still in his meditation, and they sent Cupid to arouse Shiva so he would accept Parvati. But when Cupid approached him to arouse Shiva, Shiva became angry and disintegrated Cupid. So he became angry at that point with Cupid for disturbing him. But in the instance where he was attracted to Mohini Murti, it says that even after he had quote-unquote embarrassed himself, he wasn't embarrassed, because he was just, well, it's Krishna, it's my Lord, how can I? It's not my fault, Krishna's all attractive, and he appeared in the form of a woman. And then he bewildered me in that way. It's not some material woman of this material world, so I think it was a little bit different. Okay, thank you everybody. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare